From the moment you opened your eyes to this world, a meticulously crafted illusion began to weave itself around you. Every lesson, every rule, every whispered truth was designed not to enlighten, but to confine. The architects of this grand design never intended for you to glimpse the boundless power that resides within you. They feared what might awaken if you ever realized that from your very first breath, you were immersed in a world of deliberate deception, a world that teaches limitations, enforces the finality of death, and insists on the rigidity of linear time. But beneath the cacophony of modern existence, buried under layers of distortion and denial, flows an ancient current of truth, obscured but never extinguished. Consider Thoth, the enigmatic figure revered across Egyptian, Greek, and Hermetic traditions. He wasn't merely a myth or a god of scribes. He was the embodiment of the universal mind, the master of arts and sciences, the scribe of the gods, and the keeper of the sacred knowledge. Thoth's legacy wasn't a collection of allegorical tales, but a comprehensive manual, a blueprint for mastering reality. This profound wisdom was systematically buried beneath the rubble of empires, academic skepticism, and spiritual half-truths. These teachings aren't superficial affirmations or recycled platitudes. They are potent, transformative doctrines. They don't just alter your thoughts. They redefine your very being. Once unveiled, they cannot be unseen. You were never meant to know this. That's why no one ever told you. Those teachings weren't misplaced or forgotten. They were deliberately concealed by institutions terrified of their revelations. For millennia, knowledge capable of awakening your true nature was methodically hidden, discredited, or fragmented into hollow remnants. This wasn't mere historical oversight, but a calculated strategy to keep humanity tethered to the tangible, the measurable, the controllable. Because if people understood the depth of what Thoth imparted, they wouldn't just ask different questions. They would begin constructing an entirely different reality. This knowledge threatened established power, not just political dominion, but control over perception itself. The kind that sustains empires, empowers religions, and leaves systems unchallenged. When you grasp that consciousness creates form, that thought shapes time, and that your mind can literally alter the structure of matter, the very notion of authority begins to crumble. No ruler, no system, no dogma can stand on ground where every individual is a sovereign architect of reality. That's why Thoth's blueprint was encoded in symbols, metaphors, geometry, and riddles to preserve it, yet keep it hidden from those who would seek to destroy it. His wisdom wasn't merely stolen, it was inverted. The very societies that condemned esoteric teachings as heresy practiced them in secrecy within royal bloodlines, priesthoods, and clandestine orders. They built their inner rituals directly upon hermetic truths while feeding the masses superstition. They wielded the sacred for control while convincing the world it was profane. Over time, these teachings were diluted, shrouded in mysticism, or dismissed as mere fiction. The Emerald Tablets became legend, the law of mentalism reduced to metaphor, the sacred geometry of consciousness relegated to academic footnotes or occult fringe material. And that's precisely how the system wanted it. Today, when you search for Thoth, you're met with myths, cartoons, and surface-level spirituality. But if you delve deeper, beyond the noise, you begin to discern the outlines of something far more advanced, a system for understanding reality that doesn't seek your belief, but demands your exploration. His writings weren't religious doctrines. They were quantum blueprints hidden in plain sight. When Thoth spoke of the All, he wasn't describing a deity to be worshipped, but a frequency field. When he mentioned the planes, he wasn't being poetic, but referring to energetic dimensions. These weren't mere stories, they were instructions. And here's the part most overlooked. This system was never meant to remain secret forever. It was designed for the moment humanity reached a point of readiness. That moment is now. Why else do you think you're here, reading this, feeling as though you're remembering something you've never been taught? The first teachings begin with the mind, not the brain, but the mind. Thoth's principle that all is mind isn't a metaphor. It's a direct statement of fact. Reality is mental. Everything you see, touch, feel, and believe exists within a field of conscious awareness. Your perception is the lens that shapes it. You've been led to believe that you inhabit a physical universe where your thoughts are private, inconsequential noise within your skull. But Thoth taught the opposite. Thought is the architect of experience. Frequency is the blueprint. Emotion is the fuel, and belief is the key. This is why the system had to keep you distracted. Every mechanism around you, from the education system to entertainment, to religion, even language, is designed to disconnect you from your power to shape reality. You're told to focus on what's real, what's scientific, what's logical, but only by definitions they've approved. Yet, the very science they venerate is now converging with what Thoth knew thousands of years ago. Quantum physics is revealing that observation alters outcomes, intention shifts matter, time isn't linear, and energy responds to awareness. Thoth's teachings weren't primitive beliefs. They were advanced technologies of the soul. His truths threaten the entire infrastructure of modern thought because they make one thing clear. You are not a servant of the system. You are a system. And once you remember how to access it, everything changes. The universe isn't composed of matter. It's composed of mind. That's not philosophy. That's physics. And it's precisely what Thoth was teaching long before science caught up. He didn't waste time explaining gods with human emotions or spinning myths to keep people obedient. He provided instructions, pure, functional esoteric technologies disguised as spiritual ideas, designed for those ready to see beyond the surface. When Thoth said, "All is mind," he wasn't offering an opinion. He was laying out the foundation of how reality operates. Thought is the substance behind substance. The world you experience isn't happening to you. It's being filtered, shaped, and reflected by your state of consciousness. The moment you understand that, you cease living as a victim of circumstance and begin operating as a conscious participant in creation itself. This realization can be uncomfortable for some because it places responsibility back in your hands. If your thoughts, frequency, and emotional state are crafting your reality, then the chaos in your life isn't random. It's reactive. Not always your fault, but always a reflection. Thoth called this alignment. He taught that when your thoughts, emotions, and actions operate in harmony with the laws of the universe, reality bends with you, not against you. And that's not manifestation in the watered-down, wish upon a star sense. It's mechanics. Consciousness is causal. Everything else is effect. He also elucidated how vibration is the architecture behind all form. What you perceive as solid objects are merely frequencies slowed down into visibility. You don't see the field. You see the freeze frame. But beneath every person, every object, every emotion is a vibrational code. Shift the code, and the form changes. This is why rituals, sound, symbols, and even intention aren't superstitions. They are tools, real tools for real work. The ancients weren't primitive. They spoke in a symbolic language because truth this powerful can't be handed to just anyone. It has to be activated. Modern science refers to it as quantum field theory. Thoth called it the great mental. They light candles, recite affirmations, scribble desires onto vision boards, and chant spells under full moons, but most have no idea what they're truly doing. These rituals, once sacred technologies of consciousness, are now aesthetic gestures, diluted by trend and stripped of their original purpose. People reach for power without understanding. But as Thoth warned, power without wisdom is not empowerment, it is destruction. That's why the mysteries were never open to all. Not because of elitism, but because knowledge carries weight. Because when you can reshape reality with your mind, every thought becomes a sacred responsibility. In ancient times, Initiation was the key. Not a ceremony to belong, but a process to become. The esoteric wasn't hidden because it was forbidden. It was veiled because it was dangerous to wield without grounding. If your mind is the architect of reality, then the purity and precision of that mind determine what you create. Today, that understanding has been fragmented. We've been trained to believe spirituality and science are opposites. We're told consciousness is merely a side effect of chemical reactions in the brain, a biological accident. But Thoth taught the opposite. He taught that consciousness is primary, the source, not the result. That all matter arises from mind, not mind from matter. That flips the materialist worldview completely upside down. And it doesn't just shift philosophy, it shatters limitation. If your reality begins in thought, then what you think defines what you live. Every belief you accept becomes a building block of your world. Every false assumption becomes a wall around your potential. But if you start to question, really question, you weaken the illusion. You unravel the lie. This is not about blind optimism or wishful thinking. It's about the mechanics of creation. The teachings of Thoth were never about worshiping gods or escaping the world. They were about stepping into your role as a co-creator. Not a deity above others, but a conscious spark within the greater fire. A drop of the all with the power to remember itself. That remembering? It's what they've been trying to make you forget. The noise of modern life, the endless distractions, the addictions, the fear, all designed to keep the signal buried. Because when the signal gets through, everything changes. You realize time is not what you were told. That lie was among the first and most effective. You were taught that time is a straight road. You're born, you live, you die. Past behind you, future ahead. One direction, no turning back. But Thoth dismantled that idea completely. He revealed that time is not linear, but spiral. It bends, loops, folds back on itself. It expands and contracts based on your consciousness. What you call the past is not gone. What you call the future is not waiting. They are both happening right now on different layers of awareness. This is not poetic metaphor. It's instruction. It's a technology of the soul. You are not moving through time. Time is moving through you. This realization unshackles you from fate. It dissolves the illusion that your future is something you must wait for, or that your past is something you're forever chained to. If time is spiral, then trauma, belief systems, patterns, they loop. And when you recognize the loop, you can break it. You can rewrite the story. You can enter the spiral with intention. This isn't sci-fi fantasy. This is a forgotten science. Indigenous elders whispered about it. Mystics dreamt it. Quantum physicists stumble upon its edge. But Thoth taught it systematically. Through symbols, geometry, and frequency. You've seen the spiral, the infinity loop, the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail. These aren't decorations. They are blueprints. Codes embedded in ancient architecture, in sacred texts, in our very DNA. They show how energy moves, how awareness shifts across dimensions. When Thoth said, man is a flame bound to a mountain, he wasn't being poetic. He meant consciousness is trapped in matter, confined to time until it remembers it can move. And when it moves, everything rearranges. The events you once thought defined you begin to dissolve. Patterns emerge. Echoes of past choices ripple into the present. That eerie sense of deja vu, the gut feeling you can't explain, the dream that feels more real than waking, these are not glitches. They are bleed-throughs. Moments when the spiral folds in on itself and the illusion of linear time breaks down. Most people ignore them, but those who are awake learn to listen. Thoth taught that these openings in time can be used. You don't need a time machine. You need frequency. Consciousness is the vehicle. Memory doesn't live in your brain, it lives in the field. And the future is not something you arrive at, it's something you broadcast. When your thoughts, emotions, and energy align with a specific version of the future, you begin to collapse probability. The field starts responding. Synchronicities accelerate. Events organize themselves. The timeline shifts. This is not imagination, it's instruction. It's how you navigate the spiral. It's why initiation existed, to train your consciousness to move through time deliberately, with precision. Past lives? They aren't back there in history. They're happening now, on a different curve of the spiral. That also means you're not stuck in your past. Whatever trauma, programming, or limitation you think defines you, it can be rewritten. If you can access the point, you can shift the pattern. Thoth called this mastery of the cycles. To see the spiral is to step off the wheel. Karma, fate, repetition. These only trap those who walk blind. But when you see how time really moves, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop waiting and start creating. But the world around you doesn't want that. That's why we live inside artificial time. Alarm clocks, office hours, deadlines, school bells. These are not tools of productivity. They are tools of entrainment. They synchronize your biology, your emotions, your thoughts to rhythms that are not your own. Over time, you start to believe this is who you are. But your deeper self remembers something else, a different beat. The spiral hum, the pulse of the greater field. That's why moments of awe, love, creativity, they feel timeless. Because they are. Time is not your enemy. It's your medium. It's not a chain, it's clay. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are exactly where your frequency placed you. But that frequency is not fixed. It can change. And when it does, everything else shifts with it. You're not here to drift along the spiral passively. You're here to move through it with precision, with presence, with power. And now we come to death, the great fear, the final silence. From the moment you were old enough to understand it, you were taught to dread it, to see it as the end. Avoid. The lights go out, and that's it. Game over. But that fear? It was planted there, not by nature, but by design. Because someone who fears death is easy to control. They'll obey. They'll submit. They'll cling to illusions of safety, even if it means surrendering their soul. Thoth didn't teach fear. He taught remembrance. He called death not a disappearance, but a doorway, a transition, a shift in frequency. According to him, the soul doesn't die, it moves. It slips into the next octave, what we call the astral or the etheric planes. These aren't fantasies. They are layers of reality operating on different bandwidths. You don't see them because your senses are tuned to density. But the soul remembers. And that's what the system doesn't want you to realize. Because if you knew, truly knew, that your consciousness cannot be destroyed, you wouldn't be so easy to manipulate. You wouldn't sell your time, your energy, your spirit for promises of protection. You'd stop clinging to smallness. You'd start asking bigger questions. You'd start living. Thoth didn't romanticize death. He respected it. He taught that death is a sacred threshold, one you can cross consciously or unconsciously. Most drift through it asleep, dragged by fear, tangled in unresolved emotions. But those who awaken in life can awaken in death. Through preparation, through alignment, through initiation, the soul can carry clarity and intention beyond the veil. This isn't religion. It's navigation. That's why so many of Thoth's teachings focus on energetic mastery. Because the more you align with universal while alive, the more fluid your transition becomes. Death doesn't change your frequency, it magnifies it. If your life is spent in fear and confusion, those vibrations echo. If it's spent in presence and creation, those resonate too, not as punishment or reward, but as continuity. And there's more. Thoth warned of the in-between places, the shadow zones, where unprepared souls linger, trapped in confusion, unable to move on. Not hell, but distortion, static on the channel. These places exist not because death is cruel, but because consciousness was never trained to navigate. That's why initiation matters now more than ever. Not to join a secret society, but to become sovereign across dimensions. To know yourself not just in the mirror, but in the mirrorless space beyond it. You are not your name, not your history, not your body. You are the signal. You are the navigator. And time is finally listening. We tend to tiptoe around truths too large for language. We reduce them to science, tuck them into categories, near-death experiences, brain chemistry, hypnagogic states, as if naming something is the same as understanding it. But names don't hold the weight of direct experience. And for those who've stood on the edge of this reality, who have brushed against that great unseen beyond the body, there is a knowing they carry back like embers in their hands. Consciousness does not die. It moves. It shifts. It transforms. And in that place beyond breath, beyond flesh, something else waits. Something intelligent. Not a void. Not a silence. But a presence that responds to your awareness, to your intention, to the quality of your being. Thoth understood this. Thousands of years ago, he left maps, not literal ones, but encoded through symbol, through sound, through ritual and vision. He knew that the soul doesn't navigate the beyond with logic or intellect. It navigates with resonance. He left keys, not answers. Because the real initiation isn't into knowledge, it's into memory. Remembering what you are, what you always were, and what the world taught you to forget. One of his most urgent messages echoes through time like a bell in the dark. Don't wait until death to remember who you are. Don't wait until your final breath to reclaim the awareness that is your birthright. If you can master awareness here, in this density, in this chaos, if you can stay conscious inside a world designed to keep you asleep, you carry that power with you. Death does not rob you of it. In fact, it expands it. You don't have to be surprised when the body falls away. You don't have to be dragged across that threshold in fear and confusion. You can walk through the portal with open eyes, knowing the truth they never taught you. You are not the body. You are the witness behind it. The presence, the current, the spark. And when that spark aligns with truth, it doesn't extinguish. It evolves. The fear of death is one of the oldest chains humanity wears. It's been passed down in stories, in silence, in religion, in medicine, wrapped around our necks until we live not fully, but cautiously. We tiptoe through life like it's a minefield, trying not to get hurt, trying not to lose, trying not to die. But when that fear is broken, when you see it for what it is, a lie, a veil, something remarkable happens. You stop living in avoidance. You begin to live with presence, not recklessly, but consciously. You start to feel every moment as sacred, every conversation as part of a longer journey, not a march to the grave, but a spiral, a return, a remembrance, a refinement. Thoth didn't want you to fear death. He wanted you to prepare for it, not from dread, but reverence. Because how you die is shaped by how you live. And when you live with awareness, you start to sense a simple, ancient truth, one that threatens every system of power that profits from your disconnection. Death is not the end. It's a transition, a doorway, a beginning. And the state of your awareness as you cross that threshold determines where and how you arrive next. You've been taught your power lives outside you, in status, achievement, control. You've been trained to measure your worth by how well you dominate your environment. But Thoth turned that entire framework inside out. Power, he said, is not something you chase. It's something you activate, and not through force, through self-mastery, through alignment, through remembering. And he wasn't talking about motivational slogans or productivity hacks. He was pointing to something far more ancient. Within you lives a layered system of consciousness, a multidimensional operating system coded with energy centers, frequency gates, and access points to realities most people have never even dreamed of. And the reason they haven't? Not because they're incapable, but because they've been conditioned to ignore it. Distracted, numbed, taught to look outward for what only lives within. This is the essence of inner alchemy. Thoth wasn't preaching morality. He was laying out mechanics. He saw the human not as a single being, but a constellation, a union of forces: physical body, emotional body, energy body, mental plane, causal field, higher self, each with its own rules, each with its own doorway. And the key to awakening them wasn't guilt, wasn't shame, wasn't even belief. It was responsibility. Responsibility for your frequency, for your thoughts, for your choices, for the direction you aim your will. That was the foundation of his teaching. Sovereignty, not the illusion of freedom handed to you by systems that monitor your every move. Real freedom, internal liberation, the ability to choose your vibration, to guide your consciousness instead of being guided by it. Thoth never offered salvation. He offered tools, geometry, silence, myth, ritual, visualization, sound, not as decoration, but as instruments to tune your being, because that's what self-mastery truly is. Tuning, coherence, alignment. Most people aren't broken. They're just out of tune. Their emotional bodies hijacked by trauma. Their thoughts looped into distractions and doubts. Their energy drained by systems that feed on disconnection. So they move through life like static, broadcasting signals they don't even realize they're sending, wondering why nothing seems to flow. But when you begin the work, not the performative spiritual routine, but the true inner inquiry, you realize most of who you think you are is borrowed. Your beliefs, your patterns, your reactions, absorbed, repeated, echoes of a world that trained you not to awaken, but to conform. And the moment you begin to question them, you create space. And in that space, the real you begins to emerge. That emergence, Thoth called the return to center. Not a destination, a process, a stripping back, a dissolving of noise. And beneath it all, what's left is the signal, the original frequency, the unique blueprint of your soul before the world told you who to be. He taught that mastery isn't about domination, it's about coherence. When your inner systems align, life doesn't necessarily get easier, but you stop resisting it. You stop leaking energy trying to hold up masks. You stop seeking validation from systems built to keep you insecure. In the stillness that follows, your real power rises. Quietly, organically, without performance, without apology. Most people believe enlightenment is a flash, a single moment of light. But Thoth described it as a slow fire, a refining, a deepening over lifetimes. And he warned, the ego will try to hijack that journey. It will wear spiritual language like armor. It will disguise pride as purpose. It will mistake superiority for insight. That's why humility is not optional. It's your compass. Without it, you're not awakening. you're collecting. You're armoring your wounds in the name of wisdom. True mastery doesn't need to be seen. It doesn't scream. It radiates. And here's the paradox. The deeper you go into the self, the more you see there is no separate self. The I who watches. The I who chooses. The I who awakens. That's not the personality. That's awareness itself. And when that awareness awakens within form, you stop asking for permission. You remember that you were born with access to realms, to truths, to abilities that transcend this five-sense world. And no one can give that to you. They can only remind you that it was always there. Thoth didn't offer comfort. He offered truth, sometimes sharp, always liberating. He knew that until you mastered your own being, the world would master it for you. And make no mistake, these systems you move through, education, religion, media, culture, they do not serve your awakening. They reward your distraction. They monetize your amnesia. They glorify image and suppress depth. And if you don't reclaim your inner space, they will fill it for you with noise, fear, false gods, broken promises. But once you begin the true path of mastery, not as performance, but as remembrance, you become dangerous to those systems. Not because you rebel, but because you remember. And that remembering is the ignition point. The spark, the shift from being a product of the world to a conscious co-creator within it. And that's what they never wanted you to know. That the power you've spent your life chasing already lives in you. It was never outside. It was never withheld. It was only hidden, buried beneath distractions, distortions, and doubt. And the reason these teachings are so hard to find isn't because they were lost. It's because they were buried on purpose. Systematically, strategically, when empires rose, they didn't just conquer land. They conquered memory. Knowledge that couldn't be used to control the masses was hidden, encoded in symbol, locked in secret orders, disguised as myth. Thoth's name was reduced to a caricature. His teachings fragmented, scattered across religions, philosophies, mystery schools, never reassembled in full. You were given fragments, echoes, never the source. And yet, the fingerprints remain. They're etched into architecture, embedded in sacred geometry, whispered through music, echoed in ancient symbols carved into government buildings and monuments. They're hiding in plain sight, but they require eyes that see beyond programming. You were trained to forget, trained to roll your eyes at the very knowledge that could set you free. That's the genius of this system. It didn't need to destroy the truth. It just made it uncool. It buried it under spiritual fluff, academic arrogance, and media distraction. It made it boring. Woo! Uncredible, but that's changing now. Quietly, irreversibly. People are remembering. You are remembering. That feeling you get reading these words, the one that doesn't come from logic, but from some deeper place inside you, that's resonance. That's the signal. That's you recognizing something you've always known. You've been here before. Maybe not in body, but in awareness. And some part of you never forgot. The emerald tablets were never meant to be mainstream. They weren't designed to trend, to be easily digested, or mass marketed to the distracted crowd. They were written for the rare ones, for the curious, the discontent, the rebels of thought, for those who look at the world and, despite the noise and the numbness, feel something deeper calling from beneath the surface. The ones who pause in the middle of a perfectly normal day and feel the ache of knowing there has to be more than this. And there is. But it's not out there in a course or a podcast or a perfectly curated spiritual aesthetic. You won't find it in trending reels or in the footnotes of history books. You find it when you start peeling back the layers you didn't even know were wrapped around you. When you begin questioning the voice in your head that you thought was yours. When you stop chasing answers and begin listening to the silence behind your thoughts. That silence? That's the beginning of everything. This knowledge was hidden not because it's complicated, but because it's powerful. Dangerous, even to the systems that profit from your disempowerment. A person who remembers who they are cannot be manipulated. They can't be sold the illusion of success or security. They can't be herded into belief systems that demand obedience while robbing them of sovereignty. So it's been buried, not erased, but obscured, hidden behind dogma, coated in metaphor, preserved for those willing to go within, not just without. Thoth didn't want followers. He didn't want altars or praises or worship. He offered something far more radical, self-initiation, a blueprint for returning to your original frequency, the part of you that existed before culture, before trauma, before programming, the part that was never confused about your purpose. That ancient signal still lives inside you, beneath the noise. And his teachings weren't commandments, they were keys. Not to another man's truth, but to your own. You're not here to be a passive observer of your life. You're not here to be a consumer of curated truths. You're not here to follow pre-approved paths. You're here to build your own, to remember. And when enough of us remember, that's when the illusion starts to unravel. Not with some grand explosion, but with a quiet shift that begins in the hearts of individuals. One breath, one decision, one awakening at a time. You don't need to join a secret society or light a specific kind of candle. You don't need to memorize chants in a language you don't understand or wear a robe under the moonlight. The real initiation isn't ceremonial. It's internal. It begins the moment you stop outsourcing your awareness and begin reclaiming it. It begins when you stop running from yourself and start sitting with the uncomfortable truths you buried. That space, the quiet one, the one that just watches, isn't empty. It's sacred. That's the doorway. The paradox is this: the most powerful knowledge in existence isn't locked away behind golden gates or ancient temples. It's hidden in the last place most people ever think to look, within. The teachings of Thoth were never about escaping life. They were about entering it more deeply, not floating above the chaos, but walking through it with open eyes and a clear heart. His wisdom wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. And presence isn't always pretty. Sometimes it means facing the parts of yourself you've tried to ignore. The triggers, the patterns, the emotional armor you wear like second skin. Every discomfort is a message. Every emotion is a portal. Every shadow is an invitation to see more clearly. Your body, your mind, your reactions, they are not obstacles. They're maps, guides, tools. And when you learn how to listen, you realize that nothing was ever trying to hurt you. It was all trying to wake you up. This is the real work. Not reading more books. Not collecting more information. Integration. Embodiment. It's easy to quote the wisdom of sages. It's harder to live it. Harder to breathe through fear instead of reacting to it. To stay present when pain knocks at your door. To sit in silence when distraction is just a tap away. But that's the path. That's initiation. Most people expect awakening to be some lightning bolt, a sudden download from the universe. But more often, it's a slow burn, a gentle erosion of lies, a steady revealing of all the ways you've been living small, dimming your light to fit in, numbing your intuition to survive. You start to see where you're not free, the relationships that drain you, the beliefs that shrink you, the habits that keep you anesthetized. And once you see, you can't unsee. Then comes the choice. Do you go back to sleep? Or do you follow the pull, even if it breaks everything you thought was real? Because once you start this journey, you can't fake it anymore. You can't pretend that small talk is enough, that convenience equals joy, that performance equals purpose. Everything false begins to feel unbearable. You lose things: comfort, familiarity, maybe even people. But what you gain is worth everything: alignment, sovereignty, truth. You stop living by default and start living by design, your design. This path isn't glamorous. It's not curated. It's raw, wild, and deeply personal. But it's sacred. And once you're on it, you realize you were never truly alone. Because others are waking up too. All over the world, in different time zones, languages, and bodies, people are hearing the same whisper: there's more. And we are remembering, together. That's not a coincidence. That's convergence. The system depends on separation. Divide and conquer is not just a military strategy, it's a psychological one. Isolate the awakened ones. Make them feel crazy, alone, disconnected, so that even when they begin to see clearly, they doubt themselves. Stay quiet. Second guess. But when those souls start finding each other, when we start speaking, everything changes. The illusion loses its grip. Thoth never intended his teachings to be hoarded by the few. He encoded them for the ones who would eventually remember. Not to escape the system, but to transform it. Because consciousness isn't passive, it's viral. When one person wakes up, they don't just free themselves. They emit a frequency that wakes up others. And slowly, that ripple becomes a wave. That's how revolutions happen. Not with force, but with resonance. With remembrance. This is not a rebellion. It's a revelation. And you're a part of it. If you've read this far, you already feel it. That stirring. That knowing. That soft but unshakable yes. That isn't something new you're learning. It's something ancient you're remembering. You're not being taught, you're being triggered into awareness. You felt this truth before. In dreams. In déjà vu. In those rare, lucid moments when life feels both surreal and deeply familiar. That's the language of your soul speaking. That's what those teachings activate. Not your intellect, but your memory. The part of you that knows. The emerald tablets aren't a checklist. They're not content to be consumed or quotes to collect. They're activation keys. They unlock parts of you that were sealed shut by design. Because the system knew, if you ever remembered your power, your truth, your divinity, you'd be unstoppable. This isn't just another scroll on your feed. This is a crossroads. You can keep going like this, didn't move something in you. Or you can pause, breathe, and admit that everything feels different now. Because once you see the illusion, you can't unsee it. The story you were told no longer fits. The mask no longer holds. And that's where it begins. Not with fireworks, but with a quiet decision. I'm done performing. I'm ready to live. Fully, consciously. Not perfectly, but presently. Because the true essence of these teachings is this: knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is. Information doesn't free you. Embodiment does. You don't need permission. You don't need a guru. You don't need more time. You need presence. You need trust. You need the courage to finally live the truth you've always felt. The version of you that you've had to bury to survive. That's the real you. The one this world desperately needs. Not watered down. Not filtered. Fully alive. Fully awake. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been. And if the world isn't ready for that, good. That's how you know you're on the right path.